Hello. So in this video, I want to talk about anger as an emotion from a philosophical point of view. Um, Anger, I think, is one of the most basic and sincere of human emotions. Basic because it goes way, way, way back to primeval sort of thinking, way, way, way back to our Neanderthal cousins. It's something that is instinctive in the human psyche. I mentioned goes way, way back. You know, One Neanderthal picks up a stick, another Neanderthal found the same stick, anger. So something is very, very deeply embedded in our psyche as human beings. Now, when you say anger, it obviously has negative overtones. It's seen as a negative emotion. But is that quite accurate? Is anger always a bad thing? This is the open question I want to make for this video. Now, I'm someone who has experienced quite a lot of anger in my life. That's not the same as being an angry person. It's not the same thing. Um, an angry person has a connotation with being bitter with the world, and I'm certainly not bitter with the world. Many things I love about this world. In fact, it might be true that most of my videos give a negative overtone, but it's not quite reflective of who I am. And if that is the perception, that's a pity because it isn't who I am. But I think this is something that is worth looking at. When we are talking about anger, you can't avoid the aspect of how anger is controlled, how the individual controls their anger. And the truth is, some people are a lot more adept at controlling anger than others. I don't think that means that they are necessarily more calm. It just means that they have adapted a way to control it. There's certain walks of life where you need very tough skin. It goes without saying politicians or people involved in political power have to have very tough skin because they're going to be attacked left, right, and centre. And I'm not just talking ideologically, I'm talking literally left, right, and centre. On a podium, left and right. Um, so, in those circumstances, sometimes anger can work to a politician's advantage, sometimes it can work to a disadvantage. Um, I remember during the 2008 campaign, McCain was sometimes caricatured as an angry old man by the left. Um, so that's an example of anger backfiring. Now, whether that's a fair stereotype or not, that is a perception that was out there. But then there's other times when a candidate is expected to be angry because if they don't show that anger, they're seen as being out of touch. So if you have a community that is angry, let's take, for example, Flint, Michigan, both Clinton and Sanders tonight came across as quite angry. And I think that was deliberate. I'm not saying it was cynical. I think maybe there's genuine anger there at each other as it's a campaign, but also there is that expectation that a candidate needs to be angry on behalf of people. I think anger can come down basically to two things: personal grievance, that is a personal sense of one has been slighted, one has been treated unfairly. Say, for example, your boss has underpaid you, or you've been a victim of bullying, or you've been discriminated against. That is personal anger based on a personal grievance, for right or wrong. Sometimes people get angry based on paranoia when there is nothing there. But then there's another type of anger, and this is where I want to talk about anger being a more positive force. The first thing is very natural. It's a natural human instinct to feel anger if you feel that you've been treated unfairly. The second point is what I would describe as empathetic anger. That is anger at what one perceives to be a social anger on behalf of others. Sometimes this is can get quite tribal. It's like anger for my people, whereas other times it's a more utilitarian anger. So, for example, you get people who feel that their particular community has been treated unfairly, or their particular demographic has been treated unfairly. There's countless examples. no point going through them because it would, just lengthen the video. But the principle is actually quite, not talking about the rights and wrongs of individual campaigns, but the principle is actually quite utilitarian because it's anger on behalf of others' perceived suffering. So most decent human beings, if they see a vulnerable or innocent person or innocent animal for that matter being abused, their natural instinct is anger. So that to me is a positive emotion. It may not be a pleasant thing to feel, but it is positive insofar as it is based on a noble concept. That is wrong. If I hear reports about some totalitarian regime torturing dissidents, it makes me angry. And it makes me angry because I'm thinking these people can't defend themselves. So it's my natural instinct as a human being to feel anger at that injustice. When I hear about someone who has been suffering from gangs, driven from their home, had their lifetime savings stolen by a robber, etc., that makes me angry. So the point I'd like to make is that anger isn't always a bad thing. Anger can motivate to make a positive change because if there's no anger, then you can get apathy, and apathy is not a good thing. If there's apathy, then you get no justice for victims of crime. You get no justice for victims of oppression. So anger can be channeled as a positive force. It's not fun. It's not pleasant. It raises the blood pressure. It can be quite an overwhelming feeling. But the point I like to make is we shouldn't assume that anger is always a bad thing. Now, clearly, there's times when it is, because if someone can't control their anger, that might lead them to strike out, so it can result in violence. Um, it might lead them to say hurtful things to someone, and so on. So, there's a negative side as well, obviously. And for health reasons, it's clearly not healthy to be angry all the time because it raises blood pressure, not good for heart. But that's all I'd like to say. Anger, and I've deliberately tried to avoid specific issues in this, because that would just detract from the main point. If you ask a protester what they're angry about, it's always a perception of injustice to their particular community or the particular block of people that they say that they're representing. So for right or wrong, that is what it's based on. That is what their thinking is based on. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on anger. I'm not saying anger is a good thing. All I'm saying is that it's not always a bad thing. It can be channeled into action. And frankly, if you go through life never feeling angry with anything, I don't think you're really living. Because, and actually, people who never get angry, it does make me wonder where, I do question the value set there. And this is not, to be overly judgmental of others, but if you never get angry, if you can't get angry at cruelty, at injustice, and different people have a notion of what justice is, but any sort of injustice, that does make me wonder, well, are you not conscious of the world around you? So I think anger is a very, very human emotion, and I think it can be healthy to channel sometimes if we bottle things up. This is another point. People who bottle things up and pretend everything is okay very often end up quite neurotic and then explode, often on innocent people. So I'm not saying it's healthy to go around being angry, but I think it's equally unhealthy to bottle it all up. So let me know your thoughts on the subject of anger.